Joining us now to discuss further is CNBC contributor and Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times columnist Jim Stewart. Jim, welcome. What a perfect day to get your opinion on this. Do you think the writing was on the wall the moment that Bob Iger decided to come back?
Absolutely. But the real nail in the coffin was Ike Perlmutter's flirtation, shall we call it that, with Nelson Peltz. I mean, that was perceived inside Disney, and I'm reliably told by Iger as well, as an unforgivable betrayal. This was somebody who went out, who knows what Ike Perlmutter told Nelson Peltz, as Nelson Peltz was preparing his proxy attack on the company. But this was an unspeakable breach of company loyalty, and it may also have been a breach of confidentiality. I don't think there was any way that Ike Perlmutter was going to survive unless Perlmutter had succeeded. If Peltz had succeeded in gaining influence and could have protected him. But no, he was doomed once he seemed to cross over into the Peltz camp. And by the way, as you can see from that interview, there was bad blood between Iger and Perlmutter going way back.
Oh, for sure. It's interesting, too, because your newspaper, the New York Times, today, in writing this story, says, I'm quoting now from the article, Mr. Perlmutter has been a distraction inside Disney for more than a decade, described as irascible and unrelenting. In his interaction with, whether it's the CEO position or others within the C-suite, if not the board. But he was there for a long time.
Well, yes, and it's very interesting. This was characterized as a layoff. I mean, essentially that he was fired. They didn't even give him the option of, quote unquote, resigning, as far as we know, which would have been a more graceful and less humiliating way for him to leave. There's a lot of ill will here running both directions. So they didn't even put a fig leaf over that. Yes, people have been complaining about him for years, and a lot of it has come, he clashed with Kevin Feige, particularly from investors' perspective. Kevin Feige is the genius behind Marvel. He made it what it is today under Disney. It's a vastly more profitable and more successful enterprise than when Ike Perlmutter owned it before selling it to Disney back in 2009. But it was his company, and as Iger mentioned, he did give him some kind of assurances. We may see even litigation about this, depending on what exactly it was that Iger had promised Perlmutter. And for many years, however distracting he was, they tolerated it because there was this agreement. He had sold them the company, and Iger had personally given some kind of assurances that he would, quote unquote, run the Marvel enterprise. Well, that was more and more illusion than reality, because they'd moved the movie division to protect Kevin Feige away from him. So his power was much diminished. But for this humiliating ending, I think it shows the level of bitterness that had grown up, and particularly the anger over his dealings with Nelson Peltz.
I can't help but think of a little bit of irony here in that, Mr. Perlmutter obviously wanted a shakeup in the company. That's why he backed Peltz in part, otherwise, of course, their friendship as it existed or still exists. He didn't get the exact shakeup how he wanted it, but at the end of the day, he got the shakeup.
Yeah, it's true. Well, Peltz, when he withdrew his proxy fight, said the reason he was doing it is that Iger had basically agreed to do everything that he was agitating for. Now, I don't know exactly that. I'm sure that's entirely true. He certainly didn't get the board seats he wanted. But no, it's totally ironic that after Peltz was agitating for a shakeup, apparently supported by Perlmutter, who was, acting as a liaison with him and encouraging this, that suddenly his is the first and the biggest and the most prominent head to roll. I think there is a message there to anyone else at Disney, high-ranking or otherwise, who might be pondering whether they should be, communicating with potentially hostile outside investors in the company.